University is so often described as the best time in one's life. If you are going through university and that is not the case for you, I want to tell you that that is okay. But I finished 2 years of university. I have made every mistake in the book, learned so many things, and in this video, I'm going to give you the real talk university advice that I wish I had gotten. I watched so many videos before going to university about advice, mindset, studying, things like that. And I feel like everyone gives the same generic advice. I want to give you guys the real nitty-gritty advice because it is hard. But although it's going to be difficult, there are things that we can do and there are things that we should know to make this process a little bit better, a little bit more manageable, a little bit more fun and exciting. I can honestly say that I've gotten to a point where I love university. And this is coming from someone who in first year hated it. I hated university. I would go home so often because I hated being here. I hated studying. I hated the social aspects. I hated everything about it. And now I can genuinely say that these are some really good days of my life. One piece of advice I have is to say yes. There were a couple months during my second year where I had to sit down and tell myself, you cannot keep saying no to everything. Every time my friends wanted to go out, every time there was some kind of opportunity to meet people or go to club events or go to, just campus events, things like that, I would instantly try to figure out an excuse to get out of it so that I could stay home and study, or I could stay home and just rest so that I have energy to study. So this was actually one of my New Year's resolutions, was say yes to things. And I think I said it as like, just say yes to 5 things. And I ended up just doing this for everything. I just started saying yes. This changed my life. Genuinely. And this changed the university experience completely for me, because I went from being in my own little shell, being alone all the time, being miserable, to just saying yes to things, being around people, making friends. And here's the thing, when you actually go to things, it's not easy. I'm a pretty confident person, but I struggle a lot during first encounters to make new friends right away. It takes time. But that's the thing in university, it's repetition. You don't make friends by meeting someone once and speaking to them once. No, the way that it happens is close proximity with the same people again and again and again. And this is why clubs and extracurriculars is such a good way to make friends, because you're seeing the same people again and again and again. And so those bonds are formed. So I started saying yes, and my experience changed drastically, because then instead of being alone, I was suddenly with people, and suddenly I was connecting with people. And not only was I having fun with these people, but I realized that, hey, my experience is not just my experience. My struggles and the difficulties that I've been dealing with in university are not unique to me. And that is a very liberating feeling, to know that there are other people who are struggling just as much as you are. That is so liberating, because then you don't feel so alone. I think one of the greatest things about university is that we are all struggling, but we are struggling in a very similar way, right? Especially when it comes to exam season, things like that. It is like a shared struggle, and we can bond from that, and we can help each other through those struggles. I think that's beautiful, and I love it. Even though in the back of my mind, something was telling me like, oh, you could be studying during this time. You could be doing work during this time. I had to tell myself, hey, I will have time to study. I will find time to study. Now, take this tip with a grain of salt. I'm not saying say yes to everything and forget about studying altogether. No, you need to do work. There is a balance that needs to be made. But I'm just saying, don't go on the complete opposite end and don't do anything and get into your own like personal little bubble, because that's what I did, and that is not the way to go. Okay, the next thing I want to say is to avoid getting into a relationship during your first year. I would honestly even push to say second year as well if you can. Avoid it, but especially first year. There's so many reasons why, right? But one of the reasons is that when you're in first year, you are thrown into a completely new environment. There are new people around, there's a new situation, maybe you're living alone for the first time, or maybe you're still at home. Even if you're still at home, it's completely different. Your workload is different, your expectations are different. And this is the time when you are starting to see your life on a bigger scope. When you're in high school, your world is small. Comparatively, it's very small. You only see a certain amount of things. You only see a certain amount of steps forward. When you're in university, the world opens up to you and you can start seeing many, many steps ahead. And this is where identity building comes in. This is where you start to figure out who you are as a person, as an individual, what you want from your life. Of course, this is all being developed in high school as well, but it is completely different. It is bigger now, right? So when you're in first year and you get into a relationship very young, there's a couple things that can happen. Number one is that you are still developing. You are still learning who you are, what you want to be, what you want from life. If you get into a relationship, and especially one that you want to be serious, and the years go by and you realize that those first year values you had don't align with the person you are now, and the person you're with has values that only aligned with you at that time, that can become a problem. Both of you are developing as individuals. You're developing what you want from your life. You do not want to be developing based on what someone else wants. You want your values and your life goals and your pathway to be based entirely on what you want and not what your significant other wants. And no matter how strong-willed you are, it is very difficult, very, very, very difficult to not let someone else's thoughts and plans subtly impede on your own. The other reason I say that is because it is a huge distraction. It is a massive, massive, massive distraction, especially in first year. There is already too much new. You do not want to add to the new things in your life. You don't want to add to those stressors, because it will be a stressor at some point. At one point or the other, you are going to get into fights with your significant other. You're going to have conflict. That's bound to happen. Please avoid this in first year. And then another reason why you shouldn't is because this is the time to be making friends, and a significant other seriously takes away from that, because once you find one person you're extremely comfortable with, that desire to go out and make other friends is reduced, because you have someone that's going to want to hang out with you no matter what. And building friendships in university is so important. Like I said earlier, friendships and people are what make the experience what it is. I would avoid it as much as possible, honestly, even in second year if you can, but I know that that's when people tend to get more serious and kind of have a better plan for their lives. So maybe then it's better, but definitely first year, avoid getting into anything serious. My next piece of advice is that it's okay that you're learning how to study. I would have so much resentment towards myself for struggling to find study methods that worked, because I would think that, oh, I should have learned this in high school. University is completely different than high school. It is okay that you are still learning the best methods, the best way to study for yourself. This is going to be a process forever. Also varies course to course, right? What works for one class isn't going to work for another. This is all just going to be a process that you just keep continuing year by year, where you learn more and more and more and more and finally figure out what works for different kinds of things. For example, I'm switched from STEM to business. So even now, I'm 20 years old and I'm still learning new ways to study because I'm studying different content. And that is okay. That is more than okay. You need to do what you want to do with your life. Explore and be open-minded. Think about the other options. If you're in a program and you realize that you hate the path that you're on, why would you stick with that? I know so many people in third year, fourth year, graduated, who have just stuck with the program just because it's all they've known and it's all that they've committed to. And they're like, what do I do now? Like, I suffered through this and I got the degree. What do I do now? And once they figure out what they're going to do now, do they really like it? Sometimes people do. Sometimes it works out. But a lot of the time, if you have it in the back of your mind that you are doing something you don't like and you don't like the end goal, why would you stick with that? I think it's called the sunk cost fallacy, where people just stick to decisions because of what they've already invested into it. And this was a big problem for me. I knew from very early on in first year that I didn't want to do science. I didn't want to be a doctor, but I always had in the back of my mind that, oh, I've already invested so much into this. I've already invested, my high school years preparing for this. I've invested my first year into this. Even in second year, first semester, that's when I started to think about like, oh, do I really want to do this? And it was always in the back of my head, I've already invested so much into this. And not just the time, not just the work, not just the courses, but my mindset. I've already invested years of my life planning this. I've committed to this. Just because you've committed to something does not mean you should not leave it if it is the wrong thing for you. I am so happy that I have switched my program, and I want to say that that's going to come with a lot of struggle. That's going to come with a lot of challenges. I don't even know the extent of the challenges of which I'm going to face because of this decision, but I'm still okay with it, because the alternative was to stick with something that I was unhappy with. So I just want to tell you guys that please think about these things when you're in university. Don't just stick to what you're doing because you've been doing it. Think about it. This is your life. It is not a joke. This is your life. This is not just 4 years and then it's done. These are 4 years that contribute to the rest of your life. This is an investment into the rest of your life. So make the right decisions. If you know you're not happy with something, make the change, or at least consider making the change. And decide for yourself what you want to do. Everyone else in your life can give you advice. Your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your grandparents, your cousins, your friends, everyone else can give you advice. Take that advice. Take it. Learn from it. Do your own research. Figure things out. But at the end of the day, the decision is yours because you are the only person who has to live with the repercussions of the decisions that you make. You are the only one. Your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your grandparents, your cousins, whoever, they don't have to live through the consequences. Every decision you make is gonna affect your life and no one else's. Okay, another piece of advice I have to say is get yourself to the library, especially on your worst days. I used to just sit at home all the time, and this is bad for a couple reasons. Number one, it's depressing. Being alone all the time, every single day for days on end, it's gonna get depressing. Even if you're pretty introverted, it gets depressing at some point. Number two, you're gonna get more work done at the library. Trust me. Even if you go with a friend and you guys take an hour break or whatever to talk, you are still gonna get more work done there than at home. I mean, it depends on the person, but for most people, from my experience and from what my friends have said, when we study at home, our mind just wanders and you're more likely to take breaks because there's nobody there to watch you or hold you accountable. Even if you go to a library alone, you're not with friends, there are other people there, and so that social pressure exists. So I always recommend going to the library, especially on your worst days. There were days where it'd be 3 p.m. and I would feel like, oh my god, how have I done barely any work today? And I would pick myself up and go to the library. And I used to not do that because I would think, oh my god, it's already 3. Why would I waste my time going to the library just for a few hours? No, go, especially on your worst days, because trust me, you are going to feel better after. Next piece of advice is to actually sleep. Please, don't be like me. Sleep 7 to 8 hours every single night at least. A lot of us uni students have this mindset that we don't need sleep, like we'll compensate for it later, we'll work first and then sleep later. That's not the way it goes, because the less you sleep, the more time it's going to take you to actually get things done. The more time you're going to actually end up having to study because your brain is going to be working slower. On top of that, not sleeping adds to your stress. And when you're stressed and you're not sleeping, you're more likely to get sick. That's another thing at university that happens a lot, is you get sick so much because you're around so many people and then you're probably not eating right, you're overly stressed, all of these different factors. So please sleep, take care of your health, take care of yourself. Trust me, it doesn't matter if you didn't finish that last bit of textbook reading, go to sleep, do it the next day. It'll take you. The thing is with me is if I'm sleep deprived and I try to read something, let's say I have one textbook chapter to read, and let's say typically it would take me an hour to do. But if I'm really sleepy, that might take me like 2 or 3 hours. So if you just sleep, you're actually saving yourself time in the long run. So please sleep. Next thing I want to say is stay away from energy drinks and manage your caffeine intake. It's another mistake I make a lot.